Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us once again for TLC Presents Todd-versations. We are thrilled once more to have you join us, whether you're in your car, at your desk, hiding from your boss, whatever the case may be. We're excited to keep bringing you people and brands and ideas and things that are going on out there that I believe that need to be uplifted and talked about. So welcome, please, Carmen Rottenberg sitting over there, everybody in our global galactic audience. Carmen, 350 billion people galactically are watching this right now, so no pressure on you whatsoever. Carmen is the managing director of Groundswell Strategy. Groundswell is a Washington, D.C. consulting firm that's focused on customizing strategic approaches with their clients that interact within the regulatory agencies, which is a really interesting topic and an interesting conversation right now, especially amongst the new administration and a different USDA, et cetera. But before we do that, let me give you a little background on Carmen because it's incredibly impressive. Carmen has left the USDA after a 13-year career back in 2020 to start Groundswell. She started her career with the Federal Trade Commission in the Office of General Counsel. She has served as a Food Safety Inspection Service Deputy Administrator. She's held several leadership roles in the USDA, including Acting Deputy Undersecretary for the USDA Office of Food Safety, baller role, by the way, not a small job, as well as Administrator for the Food Safety Inspection Service. She's executed a budget over $1 billion of our taxpayer money, and she's done it by prioritizing resources and resolving disputes and advancing the agency's vision, platform, and their goals. Carmen is also credited with spearheading and implementing several key agency initiatives in recent years, including modernizing the food safety inspection system and implementing, now folks at home, if you're playing along with us, the first person that can call into our operators with the correct answer to what I'm about ready to say, you're going to win a great prize. But we don't have any prizes and we don't have an operator, but go ahead and dial anyways. She's implementing the Suloriformes inspection and establishing an updated pathogen performance standards. Carmen, help me here. Did I say it right?
Suloriformes, yes, you did.
That's what I said.
You did a great job. You did, Todd. You said it great.
Thank you very much. So everybody that's sitting right now thinking and guessing, what is that, Carmen?
Catfish.
Catfish. That's what I'm talking about.
And fun fact, Secretary Perdue, when he was coming into USDA, this was one of the first things I had to brief him on. And so I got the nickname Catfish Carmen for the
oh my God. So, well, I'm going to tell you right now, Carmen, that I just got done talking with somebody. We've just done another one of these. And one of the questions I ask people is, tell me something people don't know about you. And right. And at that very moment, he had the lead because he was caught in an avalanche. But I'm going to say that I'm going to have to put it out to vote. The Catfish Carmen might replace the avalanche story. It might. I don't know. We're going to let the studio audience judge that. We are so thrilled that you're here with us today, Carmen, and hanging out a little bit and chatting, because I think that this is a topic and what you do in DC and the process of what you do, in some ways, I think is a little bit misunderstood. When people hear strategists in DC or lobbyists in DC, they think golf outings, expensive dinners, all this other stuff that gets caught up. I think kind of a false narrative about what you actually do and provide service to, because DC is about understanding what's going on in the world. Those guys aren't all subject matter experts. People in Congress aren't subject matter experts. And you come in and you answer questions and you provide information. And you provide a level of service and conversation that I think is really needed to help advance whatever sector it is, food, fiber, automotive, all of it. It's really an important part. So I'd like to start off a little bit and try to get everybody to help understand what a strategist in DC actually does and why it's an important role.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This is a lot of fun. So,
we just got started. Just wait till the end. Wait till the prizes come out. I mean, there's more to go. Trust me.
I thought the gift was just spending the hour with you, Todd.
Well, that's true too. It is a gift.
So I left government in order to start this consulting firm because of what I saw in government. Companies so often that are regulated, and so many industries are regulated, most industries are regulated, but especially in the ag sector, they come to government, to the leadership in regulatory agencies when they've got a problem. And if you're coming to a regulated agency when you've got a problem and you haven't already formed those relationships, it's going to be a bit harder for you. You're going to have a bit harder of a way to go. And so government affairs folks, strategists, consultants in DC. They're a company's eyes and ears in DC in terms of what's going on in terms of legislation, what's going on in the executive branch, where a new administration is going. And they're also your sort of lifeline to the folks that are working in the regulatory community, in the regulatory agencies. And so I saw it done wrong a lot of times when I was administrator at FSIS, and I wanted to help companies do it right. You know, I'm really on a mission to help companies strategize how they interface with all their stakeholders. And so Congress is obviously a stakeholder, the executive branch is a stakeholder, but trade associations and other segments in industry are also stakeholders, and consumers, especially in today's environment. So trying to put all those pieces together and strategize on a best way forward in order to meet company goals and meet and exceed company goals. That's really what I do.
So it's, and I think that's such, you said it eloquently, and I think that people don't really understand what that all is. Again, I go back to what I said earlier, it's all the bells and whistles they perceive. And it's really a very important part about moving our government forward, and making sure that there is clear understanding of what's going on. And that, again, the subject matter experts have an opportunity to share, to try to help drive positivity back into whatever system it is. In this case, obviously it's agriculture. So you touched a little bit about Groundswell's mission, and I want to just kind of come back to that, because when I hear that you left USDA because you saw people doing it wrong and saw an opportunity to help change that, I think that's extremely commendable. But I want to touch a little bit. What is Groundswell's mission? I mean, what is? Can you elaborate a little bit more on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really want to see, for my clients, I want to see a change in how they're interfacing with the regulatory agencies. I want to change the dynamic. It's good for a company to be proactive in their approach with regulatory agencies, but it's also really important for the regulators to know what's going on in the industry that they're regulating. And so the mission is really collaboration, working on a much more collaborative approach. I am called by my former colleagues at USDA all the time, career employees, dedicated public servants, who, you mentioned this early on, but really are looking for finger on the pulse, what's going on, and it should be a two-way street, and oftentimes it's not, but it should be. And the same is true for the Hill offices. I mean, government affairs shops have their specialties, and my specialty really is the food safety, public health regulatory agencies.
Right. I think that is so cool. I mean, I really, and I love the fact that you come from such a unique position, right? A position of, I get it, let me help fix it, right? And I think that's just absolutely fantastic. Why does it matter, though? I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but I mean, it's like, why does it matter? Because it's not a free service. It is what it is, and but companies, in my experience, are very deeply involved working with folks like you to have that pulse, to understand what's going on. But why does the work matter, and who really does it matter to?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think that companies that choose to invest in the government affairs work, whether it's internally or whether they hire someone like me, really do see a return on that investment in terms of the relationships that they then have. You can say it's an insurance policy a bit, because if you've already established good relationships within the government, you're going to be that much better off if you have a crisis, end up in a crisis situation. But there's also, I mean, in today's agricultural world, there's so much to be done in innovation, the innovation that companies are doing, both in technology, and also approaches and processes. The government won't ever know about those things if you're not telling them about it. And so being able to have regulations that positively impact your brand, your business model, you're never going to get that if you're not interfacing and telling them what you do. And so there's lots of folks out there who will say, well, I don't really care if the government buys into what I'm doing or not. It doesn't matter to me. And that's okay, but your competitors are investing in that, and they are seeing return on investment, right? So, so I think that's why it matters. But it also matters to. I also will say it also matters to the government, because the government does really rely on folks like me who have served, who they know, who they can call and get an honest opinion and get honest information. And it's how our government works and is able to operate efficiently. There's the public process, and then there's the private conversations, and I want to move ag forward in those private conversations.
Right. I love that. I think too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of people probably perceive is that as you have an administration change, every single employee in the USDA is gone, and they just start over on, with headhunters and, trying to find new people. And that's not the case. And you said it earlier. The vast majority of everybody are career public servants who've devoted their life to government service, serving our country, serving our communities, whether it's career USDA people or people that have advanced in other agencies. But I think that's something people don't recognize. I mean, the layers that are new aren't very deep.
They're not. I mean, when you look at an agency like the Food Safety and Inspection Service, every single employee in the Food Safety and Inspection Service is a career employee. So the political appointees are in the Secretary's office, and there is an Office of Food Safety. But FDA is the same thing as CDC. These are agencies, public health agencies, that thank goodness have career employees that serve over administrations over the course of different administrations. What happens in new administrations where you see a change sometimes is in the policy. Certainly part of government affairs work is how do we drive the policy in order to be in line with my company's goals and strategic objectives. Yeah.
Right. So getting a little bit deeper down this trail of thought with you a little bit. So what work are you doing, at Groundswell right now that kind of underscores those efforts and are driving some changes?
So on the produce side, really doing a significant amount of work with United Fresh and with Produce Marketing Association on traceability initiatives, and really giving the industry, both helping the industry understand what it is the government's really trying to do, because sometimes in a 68-page proposal, it's hard to tell what they're trying to do.
Only 68 pages? That seems small for a government document.
Within the document. So I'm not trying to be rough on my friends at FDA. But government speak is tough, and so sort of working for clients that I have in order to partner with the trade association, who really is submitting those comments and doing that work. I mean, certainly as we look at the organic sector and some of the historic challenges that we've seen in the organic sector in terms of embracing innovation in certain segments, that's something that bothers me. I think it bothers USDA, and so trying to move forward. We have to embrace technology and innovation. It's important for production, for efficiencies, and certainly that's not something we don't want to get bogged down in the ways of some of other parts of the world that sort of stifle that innovation. So working on some of that. On the food safety, meat and poultry side, working really significantly with a couple of clients to drive down rates of foodborne illness, and partnering with government on data analysis and what can industry do in order to sort of advance FSIS goals. So I've got a lot of exciting work going on, but all of it comes down to how does a company position itself to achieve success with the government, and really, I mean, innovate is a big part of what I'm doing.
I think that's fabulous. And, when you think about the ag sector and technology, for one, I think that sometimes I think we get stuck with the and or mentality.
Yes.
Right. And I believe that we need to start to embrace the and mentality, because I think it's how we're going to get the ball down the field, and we have more billions of people to feed. Sitting here in California today, hearing news reports of the worst drought in 125 years. And, this is just starting. We haven't even got to, June, July. It's going to be 105 degrees in the San Joaquin Valley next week.
Yeah.
These are real legitimate problems that technology has helped. And I know sometimes it's a challenge, But it's common, I always say it's kind of like the payphone cell phone, right? I'm sure the payphone guys are pretty ticked off at the cell phone guys, but we all embraced it because it's what's next. And I think it's important we recognize that. What do you think the biggest pressing issue right now is in DC when it comes to the ag sector?
So, I mean, and you're sort of leading right into it with that comment. I mean, sustainability is a buzzword and has been a buzzword for a long time. But when you start looking at how can we, as a country, how can we measure sustainability efforts, and how and in what ways is agriculture actually the solution? Because so many times agriculture is sort of attacked as being the problem, which it's just not true. And right. Innovation, and certainly there's innovative techniques that the entire ag sector is implementing, but there's really some exciting advancements. And you and I do some work on greenhouses, and certainly I think that some of the technologies employed there is really exciting. And when we look at sustainability metrics, the innovation is what's going to get us to the government's goals. And that's true just across ag. So sustainability, climate, other countries are looking at setting, UN is looking at some standards, voluntary standards, and how is that going to impact exports? US government is keenly aware that there are, in some ways we've lost a few years in terms of telling the story of agriculture, because the last administration wasn't interested in doing that. But we have to tell the story. Companies need to tell the story, government needs to tell the story, and we're a little bit behind telling the story, but we're not behind in terms of the innovative technologies that are being employed in the sector.
Well, there's no doubt. And I've had the good fortune of playing around in a multiplicity of ag tech world. And it's fascinating to me. It's farming 2.0 in a lot of ways. And I know that it scares people in some ways, and it's a threat, capitalistic threat perhaps, and these other things. And I get that. And I understand both sides. I'm a dirt guy. I started in the dirt. I love the dirt. I played in the dirt as a kid. But we also have an administration that's standing up on the pulpit saying climate, 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 and rightfully so, because we've got some issues that I don't think that you and I in our lifetime are going to see solved, sadly to say. And if we don't start embracing these hard conversations with an and not an or, I think we sell ourselves short. And it's just really hard to look at standing here today, knowing that I have guys that I know that are not putting water on some of their trees. They're going to die because they don't have water. It's hard to look away from technology saying that can make a difference, because we have to feed people, right? That's kind of the goal. We need food, we need water, we need sunshine. And I think sometimes technology takes our mind off of the kind of the core issue, which is the food.
The food.
It's about the food.
People, and feeding people. I mean, it's there's room for a multiplicity of business models.
Sure.
And consumers, if this pandemic has shown us anything, it's that consumers really, they value high quality products and they want them at affordable prices. And there are, the worst thing that we can do coming out of this pandemic is stifle innovation. The absolute worst thing. And that's what keeps me up at night, because that's what I worry about. I worry, from the government perspective of what happens from regulatory side, and on the industry narratives, we all need to do our part to have this idea of and as opposed to or.
That's kind of me, and I'm a big believer in purpose, right? That's part of my mantra with my company. I firmly believe you got to have your purpose before you find your strategy, and you're not going to find your, don't start with the strategy to find a purpose. I don't think it works as well. Right. But I think it's important that we recognize that the purpose is we're going to have 2 billion or whatever the number finally turns out to be, more people on this planet, and we don't know how to deal with it. Right. Where we're not prepared for. We're not prepared for snow in Houston. We're not prepared for all these other things that are happening, 125-year, water issue in California. So I appreciate your position. I appreciate your open-mindedness on it. Again, I love the and word, right? That's my word in this, is like and. So I think it's super important. I want to kind of circle back a little bit to what you said with a couple other thoughts. And one of which is, I know that, COVID's been a game changer for this entire planet, right? We don't need to get into that. I think it's very well covered. But it has been an issue, especially in DC. So we've got this new administration in now. So are you feeling at all like you're having any challenges getting messaging out now in this COVID environment with the new administration? Because nobody's in the office yet, right? I mean,
that's the challenge, is that, well, though I think that's not just the challenge for government affairs folks. I think that's the challenge for employees and new political appointees too. So, it's, folks are starting, DC is opening up, and the limits on vaccination rates are really high here. So that's a plus. And then bars and restaurants are starting to lift the seating cap. And so even if you can't go into a government office, folks in the government are up for meeting for coffee, and the weather is nicer. And so there's starting to be more human interaction, or they'll come to my office is open, so they'll come to my office. So that's feeling a lot more hopeful. But honestly, speaking of technology and innovation, these platforms, Zoom and Microsoft Teams, they've made it tolerable. Being able to still stay connected has been really important. Using technology that people already have. So.
Well, it's funny, right? It's we've embraced this, right? We've embraced the new normal. So when you go back to what we just talked about, it's like, we can do it over here because we have to, but we don't want to do it over here because we don't want to, right?
For people like you and me, like, we need people. We need to be around people.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. My dogs are sick of me already. They're telling me to get back on the road. There's no doubt.
Yeah, people, my friends, they're ready to send their kids back to school. My kids are ready to send me back to work. For sure.
I love it. So I want to get into the administration a little bit because, obviously climate is one we just touched on, but besides that, you touched on a little bit, I'd like to get a little deeper thought process of just kind of how it works within your 9 to 5 or your schedule about their current priorities and what you're really pinpointing in on right now, based upon the fact that they want climate, based upon they're looking at some equality things and these are diversity things that they're working on.
Yeah. So that you just touched on it, but labor is a big piece. Equality in terms of equity and equality. Equity in how government services are executed and implemented, and then equality in terms of addressing past and sometimes not so recent past discrimination. And then climate sustainability, and it's interesting because they're really looking at the intersection of those things. And so when you look at something like trade policy and you think, well, I'm not really sure what the intersection would be there, but they are. I mean, they're looking at how workers and both getting workers and how we treat our workers and the products that we're buying from other countries and how they treat their workers. It's impacting even how they're looking at it globally, how the administration is looking. So they're taking that lens and using that as their guidepost and things that I think we'll see that policies that are promulgated out of the government will have that as the guidepost.
What excites you about the new administration policy? I'm not going to ask you what you don't like, because that's a gun to your head there. But I mean, what excites you? I mean, because every administration comes in, it's whether it's the class president in high school, everybody's got these great grandiose ideas about changing the world, and I love it. Right? I love when we get that excitement back. I love when the country gets kind of rallied around a concept or an idea. We kind of pull together. I mean, it's extremely America. So what's kind of exciting you right now that you're hearing about? And it doesn't necessarily have to be ag, but just
it's not. I think it's probably not ag, but I'm kind of excited to see what happens coming out of this pandemic in terms of our public health system. So, having worked at USDA in a public health regulatory agency, I had a glimpse into some of the potential issues for having a fragmented system ahead of the pandemic. And I think folks across food safety and public health will tell you that they had some similar concerns. we don't have a federal public health system because we have state public health partners that work with CDC, which is not a regulatory agency. And I'm hopeful that coming out of the pandemic, that there's going to be a real push to innovating. When we talk about infrastructure, really the public health infrastructure in this country, and understanding that state rights are a big part of what makes this country the United States of America. I think that there's ways to really support infrastructure in states in order to be better prepared in the future. And hopefully it'll be another 100 years before there is a public health pandemic of this magnitude, but we can't get complacent. And so what are the systems and structures that we're going to put into place, the government's going to put into place to ensure that we're prepared?
That's a great answer. And if you're, you know what, and I have to agree with you 110%. I mean, I think that it is going to be, let me back up and say that this way. I hope that we take what we didn't know and what we have learned and grow from it.
Yeah.
Right. And not be, this is what, this is what happened. This is what we know. And we're stuck over here, because we're going to have to continually keep evolving and changing. And it's very hard to change 350 million people.
Yeah.
But we've got to get down to these hard and sometimes uncomfortable conversations, to get the ball down the field. I just put together something that I'm going to post up here about being a peacekeeper and a peacemaker, and the difference between the two, where a peacekeeper is more about stopping something from happening, controlling something from happening, right? A peacekeeper is in a tank, right? But a peacemaker is somebody willing to get into the weeds and talk and solve problems and get uncomfortable. And it's a big difference between the two. And neither one of them actually tie that very closely to the word peace, which is even more fascinating to me. And I think there's a lot of that we need to recognize, that we need to do not only as a country, but also in our government, is that we need to be working on being peacemakers, not necessarily peacekeepers.
No, I love that. I love that idea. And, folks will say that there was all this politicization in the Trump administration. I would say that it's been
Suloriformes.
It's been political in this administration too. I mean, it's when our scientific messaging becomes political, I think we've got a real problem. But there's a host of problems around false narratives and social media, 24-hour news cycle, always needing something provocative. I just think we can't let it change who we are. As an American society. You talked about coming together, and I really hope that we're able to come out of this in a way that we have learned some lessons and move forward together.
So let me ask this question. So when you're up there and you're facing the challenges that you're negotiating in DC, it is kind of not only what you know, but who you know. Right. Which can help. But how does what we just kind of talked about, this peacekeeping, peacemaking kind of mentality thing, how does that pose a challenge now? I mean, and is it posing a challenge?
I think it's funny because when I travel to the Midwest where my parents live, people have this idea of DC as being very polarized, and actually it's not. I mean, there's, I was a career employee for 16 years in the federal government. And so I'm not a real political person in terms of some government affairs strategists that you find who served Democrats for a long time or Republicans, or I was a career employee. But it is a melting pot here of all different ideas and political affiliations. And I really do believe that the media makes us out to be a lot more divided than we are. But we all have a role in this sort of peace process. And it begins with dialogue. It begins with talking to each other and listening to each other. And no one knows everything,
For sure. Well, and I think it goes back to where we kind of almost full circle where we started a few minutes back, is about why a strategist is important, why it's important to have representation, be a part of the process. I think that America in a lot of ways forgets that they can be a part of a whole lot of the process that's involved in their own government.
Oh, that's right.
They just think it's somebody else is doing it, so hands off, right? Yeah. It's really not that way.
No, it's not that way. And Even when you look at some of the public statements that members of Congress make, the public persona is different than the private person, and it's why the government affairs. It's another one of the reasons why the government affairs work in DC is important, because when you can get to the private person and have a conversation with them, you often can change a position even when they've been out very forceful in a different direction. There are ways to save face and move forward.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I've been fortunate in my career, and even more so recently, talking to people in DC, and there's some really cool people that are very interested in what you have to say because they're interested. They actually have a high level of curiosity, and they realize that there's a million people in their district that can be affected by things, and they think that through. There's a passion and a commitment, I think, in public service that people sometimes forget, and I think sometimes. I don't want to soapbox it too much, but I think it's unfortunate that we don't give credit where credit is due to somebody that's been a lifetime server of this country in a government employee job, whether it be at USDA or whatever department it might be in. You know, it comes with a lot, right? It comes with a lot of pressure.
They're thankless jobs.
They are. They are.
They're long. You know. It wasn't until a few months ago, so I left in March 2020, so I'm 14 months out now. It wasn't until a few months ago that I thought, wow, I really didn't realize how much stress I was under, in that role. But it's not just me, it's everyone, because you're constantly waiting for the next thing that you have to address, and then also being attacked by, there's always people who are out there looking to attack, and so there's just they are thankless jobs, and folks that work in government are tirelessly for their entire careers. They are saints.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I think that they seem to get a lot more credit for the losses than they do the wins in a lot of ways.
Right. That's right.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because I want, it's part of that uplifting, and I'm excited about the folks that have joined us and are going to be joining us to talk about this very thing inside of different departments, because I think it's important. People need to know. People need to know. What if you could kind of prognosticate a little bit, what do you think DC is going to be like in another year?
Well, I mean, from a tactical standpoint, a lot of people have left. I mean, just left. They've gone back homesteads or hometowns, and they're going to be allowed to continue to work remotely. So the way government operates, I think, has fundamentally changed. Well, we're going to see that this was a shift in time. That was a fundamental change, and we'll see how that worked out. We've seen some other really major corporations try to do a remote work 100% of the time, and hasn't worked, and they've had to bring it back in. But right now the government is identifying positions that can be 100% telework, and so I think that actual physical people in DC, we're going to see a reduction. But we're also, there's other things coming to DC, and industries coming to DC. So in that way, we'll have an influx. So I think it sort of will balance out. I worry a little bit about not having as much of the in-person connection, just because I know how much can get done when you get teams in a room together, and Zoom and Teams and other virtual platforms just can't offer that same level. The Congress is a little bit dysfunctional right now, and we've got it's an interesting, the folks that you see constantly on television are not necessarily the people in any sort of positions of power, but they are sucking up a lot of oxygen. And what I'd like to see is much more bipartisan collaboration on things like infrastructure. But we'll see what happens. I'm an optimistic person, and I'm hopeful that we'll see some changes. But it's sort of to your point earlier, people have to lean into the process and understand that your vote really does matter.
My next question seems so it's one I had kind of pre-thought through, but it seems so relevant now to me based upon our conversation. Who's inspired you in your career to serve? I mean, where did you get it? I mean, I don't think you were 9 years old and said USDA, right? I think it's something that came to you or touched you in some way. Where did that inspiration come from?
Yeah, so it's interesting. my grandparents were Holocaust survivors and immigrated to the United States after the Second World War.
Wow.
And my grandfather always wanted to be an attorney. He was in school in the Netherlands to become an attorney, and that he didn't realize that dream. And so I think I went into law. I went to law school sort of as a family fulfillment, not because anyone put that pressure on me, but just because that story is something that I'd always heard, and I knew his personality. To know him was to love him, but he was a debater. so he really
All
inspired
grandparents.
me.
That's what grandparents do.
I know. My grandmother, she's still alive, and she's turning 95 in a couple of weeks. But they really are huge inspirations of mine in my life. And my parents were both in my father is a Reformed church pastor, and my mom is a registered nurse. And so they're both like caring professions. So I wanted to do something that was sort of going to change. I wanted to change the world. And it's why I moved to DC to begin with, but I had no idea what I would do, and certainly didn't. I grew up in upstate New York, so agricultural area, but not with family who was farming or anything like that.
Right.
I just found myself at USDA, but I mean, I think for me, family has really been inspirational. Like my family is a really tight knit group, and wanting to serve and wanting to change things, and I still feel that way. I want to solve things. I want to move us forward. So.
That's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. That is a fantastic answer to that question. It's amazing to me when you're around people as you're growing up that uplift you, how it's so easy to continue uplifting throughout your life. And I think that's just such a powerful message. Thank you for sharing that. And to your grandparents, that is just an amazing story. You want to get grandma on, put grandma on, get her right there with you. I'll hang out with grandma for an hour. We'd have a ball.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear her story a little bit. And I think everybody else would too. So it leads me, I guess, to my next question, which kind of fits us. And I love it. Give me something in your career or otherwise that you're the most proud of today.
Oh, I'm most proud of my children.
Well, that's an easy answer. I knew that was coming. I am too, right? I'm more proud that they're off my payroll. That's the better part, right? But give me.
Let's see. Ahead. Work from my work life. I think that I'm most proud of the team that I built at FSIS. So I kind of had a really unique opportunity moving up in my career. I served as chief of staff. Then I served as chief operating officer, deputy administrator. So I had a period of like 5 or 6 years where I was moving up in the organization at a pretty quick clip, but I was able to make some, to really do some broad searches for executives as folks were retiring. It happened that, and you have this happening across government, by the way, where a lot of departures from retirements, right, in the senior executive corps. And so bringing a team together that is there, if you look at the FSIS team, it is diverse in every way that a team can be diverse, and really setting up a governance process there that acted more like a corporate governance structure as opposed to typical bureaucratic. So that's my proudest. It's kind of boring, but that's my proudest achievement at FSIS.
You know what though? It's actually not, to be honest with you. And I'll say it again, it's uplifting. Right. It's exactly. I could see your personality and your words that you shared with us into that exact model of uplifting people. And I think it's great. Yeah, so you should be proud of that one.
Thank you.
And the kids, hey, don't get me wrong. The kids are great too. I'm not trying to, not going to get hate mail for that because I got 2 of them. Right.
That's right.
I'm with you there. I think that's really cool.
The teams, and I think this is important for companies to. So I think this actually gets to the whole peacemaking conversation also. We as humans, we sort of want to be surrounded by people who are like us because it's the least controversy. And we're drawn to people who are going to have synergies with us. But you are so enriched when you surround yourself with people who are going to challenge you. And so I think I am constantly preaching that to my children. Certainly growing up in the church, my gosh, you can't show me a culture that is more strange than that. Just because you've got a place where there's all these different people and different ideas, and it's a microcosm of greater society. So that's where I came up in that environment. But it challenges you, but it's so important. So to companies, I'm always telling companies that, and I serve on a lot of recruitment committees too to help folks hire.
I love that. I'm telling you what, you've uplifted me and you've inspired me, and I'm grateful that you've taken the time to do this. This is awesome. This has been great. Now I get to have some fun with you. You ready to have a little fun?
Yes, let's have fun.
Let's do a little fun. We're gonna do a little TLC trivia here with you, and this is for big prizes, huge prizes. It's not really, actually, no. So I'm going to fire off a couple quick things and we'll see what your answers are. And people get to know you a little bit. Ready?
All right, ready.
Burger or a salad?
Oh, burger.
Cheese, no cheese?
Cheese.
Good girl. Favorite hobby or sport?
I love basketball.
Good. Did you play?
Poorly.
When you were in school? Well, it doesn't matter. You played. That's good.
Yeah, I did.
That's good. Do you like to cook? Do you like to cook at home, or you like to go out more?
I love to go out. I do cook, but
no judgment. Just ask the question. It was
all right.
I'm not going down a dark trail there. No, girl, not going to happen. Dog or a cat?
Both.
Dog or a cat?
Oh. Don't make me choose between my babies.
Dog or a cat?
All right, dog.
You got that right. So let me ask this one. You're going to kill me for. What's the best present you've ever received?
The best present.
Oh, I'm not done with the part you're going to kill me. That's coming after you ask this first part.
Oh, this is going to sound so funny, but so I received a bouquet of balloons recently. That was the best present I ever received.
Nothing wrong with that.
All right.
That's killer. So let me ask part two of this question.
Okay.
Have you ever regifted anything?
I'm sure I have.
Oh, so that's just that's a soft maybe?
That's a softball. Yes, I'm positive I have. I got a big family, Todd.
I love it. I love that question. I do indeed. I got to tell you, I am just, this has been fantastic time. I've enjoyed you. I've enjoyed your company prior to this, but I've really enjoyed this, getting to know you better, getting to understand you better, letting, everybody out here see who you are and understand who you are as a person. I think it's just great. You've uplifted me. I think you can uplift a whole lot of other people on the other end of this broadcast, without a doubt.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. I got one more parting question for you, though.
Okay.
Because I think that, I think the process of being engaged is important. No matter what it is, whether it's government, whether it's with your kids, whether it's at your church, at the golf course, it doesn't matter. But being engaged is important. What's the one thing you want people to know about Groundswell?
Really, that whether somebody is hiring me or another company who does work like mine, really that strategic approaches to a regulated world, which is the tagline of Groundswell Strategy. It's hard to underscore enough how important that is as you're moving forward if you're a regulated entity. It's strategy is important, and doing it in-house or hiring out, it's just important to just constantly be re-engaging on that strategy.
Hell of a good answer. Thank you, Carmen. I can't thank you enough again for taking the time and hanging out with us a little bit.
Yeah.
I think the world of you, and I appreciate you being here and sharing with us. Open invitation, come on back, whatever. Right. We want to have you. That's a done deal. I'll come to you to go hang out with Grandma. I'd like to hang out and talk to her. I think that'd be really fascinating.
Yeah, she's amazing.
But again, that's so cool. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you to everybody that's joined us as well. Thanks for everybody stopping by again. Hopefully we made your car ride home a little better, or if you're hanging out at the desk a little better, whatever the case may be. But we do appreciate everybody being here today. And we look forward to having you back, Carmen, guaranteed. I'm going to email. As soon as we're done, I'm emailing you, getting another day for you to come on here. Trust me. I'm going to hound you nonstop. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. All right. Chat soon. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed Carmen Rottenberg with Groundswell Strategy. I got to tell you, that was fantastic. To get some little insights and better understanding about what's happening in DC is certainly well worth our time and energy, and realizing that there's a way to be involved. The government's here for us, and we should be involved, and we should try to work alongside to try to make changes that are positive for everybody and everything. So once again, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget, if you're on the audio version, the audio version is available on all the podcasting sites: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, etc. Video version available on TLC.organic, as well as YouTube, our YouTube channel. Certainly we'll be blasting stuff out on LinkedIn and these other social media sites as well. Check out our Instagram page, our Facebook page, the whole 9 yards. We're here. Thanks very much to our sponsors. We appreciate who you are and being a part of the team here. And we look forward to sharing more stories with you and more people that I think are worthy of your time and energy. So thanks again. Appreciate you. Remember, be inspirational today. That's really important. Thanks.